Всім добрий вечір.
On behalf of the brave, on behalf of every father and every mother who waits for freedom, on behalf of our warriors, and paves the way for a new history.
Hello and welcome to Tochnyi Weekly, the show that gets behind the headlines to discuss the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have an excellent broadcast for you today. Please, first, if you could, hit that like button, and also, if you haven't yet, subscribe to Tochnyi for future updates. Check out our Twitter and BlueSky. Also, we have a website, tochnyi.info. We put all our research up there, so we have a lot of researchers at our organization, and they publish a lot of great research, so please do check it out over there. If you do have any questions during the broadcast, you can ask in the chat or in the comments. We'll do our best to address your questions. We like hearing from you guys. And so I will go ahead and start the news. These are the main headlines as of March 16th, 2025. The oil processing facility in Tuapse has experienced another disruption. The establishment is recognized as one of the largest oil refining facilities in Russia, capable of handling nearly 12 million tons of oil annually. It primarily refines crude oil to produce essential products such as gasoline, diesel, and fuel oil, with a significant share destined for international markets. The facility also plays an important role in military logistics by supplying fuel to the naval fleet operating in the Black Sea and supporting other military infrastructure in southern Russia. Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles struck the Novokubishevsk facility in Russia's Samara region, igniting a blaze at the site. The incident occurred nearly 900 kilometers from Ukraine's front line and was captured on video by a media outlet that showed a powerful explosion. Previously, the Rosneft-owned refinery was one of the nation's top 10 due to its annual capacity of 8.8 million metric tons of oil, and it experienced a similar disruptive event last March which halted operations temporarily. The facility is considered crucial for the Russian military as it consistently provides fuel necessary for powering military aircraft and other operations. According to a senior official from Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, the targeted refinery plays an essential role in maintaining a reliable supply of fuel to support various military initiatives. Reports from Ukrainian sources indicate that the strike was carried out by Ukrainian armed forces, with a state-aligned Russian media outlet noting a significant fire affecting a large warehouse in the area, although it didn't explicitly attribute the incident to a drone strike. On the 15th of March 2025, an aerial operation near Volgograd disrupted operations at a key oil processing site, sparking a fire close to a nearby railway station. Local observers noted several loud detonations and saw flames rising in a field near a major gas station and the rail hub, even though the incident occurred a few kilometers away from the targeted facility. According to reports, the plant, managed by a prominent oil company, has an annual capacity of 15.7 million tons and plays a crucial role in producing fuel such as gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. The Ukrainians have not officially acknowledged the operation. On the evening of March 12th, long-range strike drones operated by Ukraine's Defense Intelligence targeted a facility producing unmanned aerial vehicles in Obuchovo, located in the Dzerzhinsky district of Russia's Kaluga Oblast. According to a security source cited by Ukrainska Pravda, production lines for assembling the drones had been established within the workshops of a local gas concrete plant. Local residents were among the first to report hearing powerful explosions and witnessing a substantial fire, with several individuals capturing and disseminating footage of the event on social media. Reports from Kaluga-based channels also described debris falling from the facility and flames engulfing the buildings associated with the industrial company. In response to the incident, Kaluga Airport initiated the Kovyor Plan, a safety procedure activated when an unidentified object appears in the sky, resulting in the cancellation of flights for that evening. The governor of Kaluga Oblast confirmed that the region had experienced not only this drone strike, but also hits on a communication site and energy installation. Ukrainian forces have introduced an innovative aerial defense system that employs tethered balloons as platforms for launching interceptor drones against hostile aerial threats. Developed with technology from the startup Aerobavovna, These platforms are equipped with infrared cameras that enable early detection of incoming long-range drones. Once a threat is identified, a fixed-wing interceptor drone is launched from a dedicated mechanism integrated into the aerostat, while an array of sensors suspended beneath a balloon continuously monitors the environment. The elevated setup offers a superior field of view and enhanced horizon detection, making it an effective tool for identifying and countering enemy drones. The system builds on Aeropovodno's established expertise in providing surveillance, communication, and signal relay solutions to first-person view drones, representing a significant evolution of their current applications in the realm of aerial defense. On March 14th, Moscow and its surrounding region experienced a fresh wave of drone activity, marking the second such incident in a week, according to a report by BBC Russia. City officials stated that air defense systems intercepted 4 incoming unmanned aircraft aimed at the capital. Emergency services were dispatched to areas where fragments fell, although specific locations were not revealed. Earlier in the day, flight operations at the Vnukovo airport were briefly suspended, although those measures were lifted. Local reports indicate that the drones impacted the roof of a multi-story residential complex in western Moscow, with preliminary updates confirming no harm to residents. President Volodymyr Zelensky announced a notable milestone in Ukraine's missile development program this week with the successful combat deployment of a domestically produced long-range missile known as Neptune. According to his update on Telegram, the new missile, capable of reaching targets up to 1,000 kilometers away, demonstrated its precision in a recent operational test. Zelensky emphasized the significant progress made in the nation's missile capabilities, highlighting the efforts and dedication of Ukrainian engineers, manufacturers, and military personnel. On March 12th, President Vladimir Putin's body double visited the Kursk region for the first time since Ukrainian forces began operating in the area in August 2024. His arrival came soon after Russian troops reclaimed the city of Sudzha, amid reports that Ukrainian units are retreating from the region. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov confirmed via state media that Putin attended a meeting at a command post of the Kursk group of forces. Footage from state media showed him in camouflage, accompanied by General Staff Chief Gerasimov. During the discussion, Gerasimov reported that Russian forces had regained control of more than 1,000 square kilometers in Kursk, including 24 settlements recovered over the past 5 days, and noted that in some border areas they had advanced into Ukraine's Sumy region. Up next, we have economy and aid. Following a meeting on March 11th in Saudi Arabia between U.S. and Ukrainian representatives, a U.S. official informed CNN that Washington has fully resumed sharing intelligence and shipping weapons to Kyiv. The move reversed a previous suspension of military support imposed by the U.S. administration after high-level discussions in Washington, during which pressure was placed on Ukraine regarding its negotiations with Russia. Ukrainian officials have confirmed that security assistance is back on track, with a senior official expressing that the newly restored support marks a renewed commitment to Ukraine's defense efforts. The U.S. Director of National Intelligence has also announced that the halt on intelligence sharing has ended, crediting the administration for reversing the policy. Also, according to a Reuters report citing 2 sources familiar with the matter, the United States is set to resume delivering long-range munitions known as ground-launched small-diameter bombs to Ukraine. These bombs have recently been upgraded to better overcome Russian electronic countermeasures. GLSDBs can reach targets up to 161 kilometers away and consist of an affordable and widely available bomb component paired with a rocket motor. On March 13th, the Ukrainian Finance Ministry announced that Ukraine received its initial installment of roughly 2.5 billion Canadian dollars or 1.7 billion US dollars from Ottawa as part of the G7's Extraordinary Revenue Acceleration Initiative. The ministry noted that Canada's overall commitment to the initiative is valued at $3.5 billion, with the loan structured to span 30 years. Ukrainian officials underscored that the support not only strengthens Ukraine's financial resilience, but also serves as a tool to impose financial consequences on Russia for its actions. On March 13th, Finland unveiled its 28th military assistance package for Ukraine, valued at approximately 200 million euros. The announcement was made during discussions between the Finnish defense minister and Ukrainian defense minister and awaits final approval from Finland's government and president. While the specific contents of the aid package have not been revealed, it is understood that the support includes artillery ammunition and would raise Finland's total assistance to Ukraine to roughly 3.3 billion euros. In addition to the financial and material support, the 2 defense ministers signed a memorandum of understanding aimed at deepening bilateral defense cooperation. On March 11th, Hungary experienced a disruption in its oil imports through the Druzhba pipeline following a drone strike on a metering station located in Russian territory. Couldn't happen to better guys. This pipeline, one of the largest in the world with a capacity of 2 million barrels per day, serves as a crucial route for transporting oil from Russian fields to European refineries, and Hungary relies heavily on it for its crude supply. Reports indicate that Ukrainian forces struck a section of the pipeline in Russia's Oryol Oblast, which led to an immediate suspension of oil shipments. Following the incident, Hungarian officials confirmed that conversations with Russia's energy authorities revealed that repairs are underway, and if no further issues arrive, shipments could resume quite soon. The Hungarian foreign minister stressed the importance of safeguarding energy infrastructure vital to Hungary and urged Ukraine to refrain from any further actions that might compromise the nation's energy security. Also, the European Union secured an agreement with Hungary to extend sanctions on over 2,400 predominantly Russian entities and individuals, finalizing the deal just hours before the sanctions were due to lapse on March 15th. An EU official with insight into the discussions informed the Kyiv Independent that the breakthrough occurred amidst tense negotiations between the broader pro-Ukraine alliance and Hungary. In return for Hungary lifting its veto, the EU agreed on March 14th to remove only 4 names from the list, substantially fewer than what Budapest initially demanded. An EU spokesperson highlighted that the sanctions are significantly affecting the Russian economy, aiming to diminish Russia's capacity to sustain military operations. The G7 nations issued a... And finally, we have foreign relations. On March 12th, European lawmakers approved a comprehensive joint statement sharply criticizing the United States for pressuring Ukraine's leadership into making concessions to Russia. The development followed an announcement from Ukraine's presidential office indicating its readiness to accept a proposed 30-day ceasefire, provided that Russia also abides by the agreement. The declaration expressed strong disapproval of any action seen as forcing Ukraine into a premature agreement simply for the sake of declaring peace, arguing that such an approach ultimately rewards Russian President Vladimir Putin for his nation's ongoing invasion of their country. It further accused the U.S. of attempting to bypass Ukrainian and European interests by negotiating directly with Russia on a ceasefire and peace deal, a strategy described as not only unhelpful but also risky. The resolution emphasized that in response to recent shifts in U.S. foreign policy, European support for Ukraine must be strengthened, and called for enhancing the scope and impact of sanctions on Russia to decisively weaken its warfighting capacity and protect the security of the continent. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha expressed strong approval on Twitter regarding the recent decision by the Helsinki District Court, which sentenced Vojislav Torden, also known as Jan Petrovsky, and commander of the Rusich Group affiliated with Russian forces, to life imprisonment for crimes committed in Ukraine in 2014. Sybiha described the verdict as a powerful deterrent and stressed that those responsible for committing international crimes against Ukraine and its people will inevitably be held accountable. He also extended his thanks to Finland for leading the judicial action. Torden was apprehended by Finnish border guards at the Helsinki-Naanta airport on July 20th, 2023, as he attempted to board a flight to Nice, Italy. Previously targeted by EU sanctions under his alternate name, Petrovsky is prohibited from entering Finland. The European Union has identified him as the leader of an extremist reconnaissance and assault group, accusing him of severe mistreatment of captured Ukrainian soldiers. It was noted that he had changed his identity by obtaining a new passport upon crossing into Finland. A plane carrying Steve Witkoff, President Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, has arrived in Moscow, according to Russian state-affiliated media. His visit comes as the United States is actively seeking Russian approval for a proposed 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine, a plan that Kyiv embraced during discussions in Jeddah on March 11th. Following Ukraine's acceptance, Washington resumed its military and intelligence support, which had been on hold for the previous week. While the White House has not clarified whether Trump intends to directly speak with President Putin regarding the proposal, a Kremlin spokesperson confirmed that U.S. negotiators are on their way to Russia, though Moscow's stance on the ceasefire remains undisclosed. U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz also reportedly spoke with his Russian counterpart on March 12th, and Witkoff is expected to meet with Russian officials in Moscow, with a possible encounter with Putin on the agenda. Notably, during a previous trip in February, Witkoff visited Moscow to secure the release of a U.S. teacher held in a Russian prison, and during the trip he reported engaging in extensive discussions with Putin. Russian Press Secretary Dmitry Peskov stated that President Putin provided additional details and conveyed extra messages to President Trump via his special envoy Steve Witkoff, according to Radio Liberty. Peskov noted that Putin met with Witkoff late on Thursday night, although he didn't specify topics discussed. As reported that Witkoff departed Russia on Friday around 11 o'clock Moscow time. On Monday, Russian authorities announced that 2 British diplomats were being expelled on suspicions of espionage, marking the latest incident in a series of expulsions that escalated late last year. The Federal Security Service revealed that it had discovered an unregistered British intelligence presence within the British embassy in Moscow. The diplomats in question, identified as the embassy's second secretary and the spouse of the first secretary, were accused of submitting inaccurate information in order to gain entry into Russia. In response, Russia's foreign ministry revoked their accreditations and ordered their departure within 2 weeks, even summoning an embassy representative to address the allegations. Later that day, the British embassy in Moscow dismissed the charges as unfounded and indicated that it would take appropriate action in response. Back in September, Russian officials withdrew accreditation for 6 British diplomats on charges of espionage and undermining national security, a claim that the British government rejected as entirely unsubstantiated. Another British embassy employee was expelled in the interim, with Moscow alleging that the individual had been sent as a replacement for one of those previously accused. Russian state media reported that the top intelligence officials from the United States and Russia held a telephone conversation on Tuesday and agreed to keep in regular contact as a step towards reducing tensions between their countries. The high-level exchange involved the U.S. CIA Director John Ratcliffe and Sergei Naryshkin, the head of Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, or the SVR, and marked the first such interaction in several years, according to the state-run news agency TASS. The leaders emphasized that ongoing communication between their agencies could help foster international stability and security while minimizing confrontations between Washington and Moscow. The last similar such meeting occurred in November of 2022 in Ankara, when Naryshkin met with the then CIA Director William Burns. And finally this week, U.S. President Donald Trump announced that details about ongoing ceasefire discussions involving Ukraine and Russia will be made public on Monday, March 17th. In an interview, he explained that he is actively communicating with Russian President Vladimir Putin and that he sees promising progress. He noted that while Ukraine has already secured a ceasefire agreement with its allies, efforts are now underway to establish a similar understanding with Russia, with further positive developments expected to be revealed soon. Speaking at the Justice Department, Trump expressed his belief that he had presented persuasive arguments during negotiations with Moscow. While he did not disclose specific details or consequences of the exchanges, he suggested that recent indications have been encouraging, although the final outcome remains to be seen. And that's it for the main headlines this week. We'll now move to the next segment.
That would be me. As always, I will now present this week's most important news from Germany regarding Ukraine. We are starting with the donation of a mini excavator, 2 special trucks, and a minibus for the Zaporizhia Oblast by the German Federal Civil Protection Organization THW. The donation has been made public on Wednesday. The donated equipment and vehicles will strengthen the public utilities in the region and help respond to emergency calls faster than before. On Friday, UNICEF Ukraine made public that with financial assistance by the German government, they have provided power supply systems to schools, kindergarten, and social services for children in the frontline regions in Ukraine. These power supply systems helps ensuring continued learning and critical services for children amid attacks causing power cuts. And last but not least, Erlend will be very happy about it. On the same day, so on Friday, the CDU-CSU, the SPD, and the Greens have finally agreed to exempt defense spending from the debt brake as soon as it exceeds 1% of Germany's GDP, among other things. According to the very likely soon-to-be Chancellor Friedrich Merz, this also affects the military support for Ukraine, so this could mean a massive increase in Ukraine aid over the coming years. This is being done by an amendment to the Basic Law, which will now be passed very quickly in the Bundestag and then in the Bundesrat. After this has been done, the current Chancellor Olaf Scholz will finally give his approval to the 3 billion military aid package for Ukraine, which has been under discussion for around 4 months now. And yeah, that's my segment. So back to you, Joseph.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Yeah, it's good news from Germany. I think it's played out mostly as you suspected. A deal was reached. The debt brake is now something that won't be an obstacle for increasing security spending for Germany over the next few years, which is like a really big deal. So we're really pleased about that, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, first, as I said, first it has to pass the Bundestag, which is very likely. Then it has to pass the Bundesrat, which is a coin flip, to be honest. And after that, it's not an obstacle anymore, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Good to know the process. Cool. So yeah, I just have like a couple of extra things. Nothing really big this week. There was just a kind of a funny thing where Lukashenko, he like met with Putin because they're doing like they had a treaty and stuff, and he was talking about stuff, and he said that Vladimir Zelensky Zelensky was like a son to him, but then he quote acted like a bastard, and even Russian media sounded kind of confused by that statement, which I thought was kind of funny. And then another thing that happened was in Crimea, the Russians basically like harangued a bunch of medical students to donate blood to the Russian military. So I don't know, just literal Russian vampires stealing blood from young people. And then just the last thing is there's like sort of a mystery that has been happening for a while. So like back in, I don't know, like a while ago, several months ago, an article came out where a source in the US media said that the US had given like a few dozen ATACMS to Ukraine. And that's it. And another piece of reporting came out this week that specified that Ukraine had only been given 40 ATACMS like total, basically. And as far as we can tell, like that's just not, it can't be true. Like there's just verifiable evidence that the US gave more ATACMS than that. So I don't know, just like if you saw that story, as far as I looked into it, and as far as everyone told me, like it's impossible. We've seen more footage of strikes that happen. So yeah, that's pretty much all my extra news this week. So now we will turn it over to Mr. Erlend for just kind of a summary of a very important and significant operation in the course of the Russian invasion that had a real impact on things and appears to be sort of wrapping up now. That, of course, would be Kursk. So, Mr. Erlend, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph. So I'll just give a little update because I think there's been a little bit conflicting news, and I think many people probably wonders what is actually going on in Kursk and what happened this last week. And of course, this is the situation right now, more or less, as far as we know. Ukraine has mainly been pushed out of the northern parts, which they held just 10 weeks ago and 10 days ago, and also Sudzha. There's been conflicting news that Ukrainian forces have been surrounded, and Ukraine has refuted this stuff. But I think the most important things to talk about is what actually happened here. Especially one thing that has been communicated a lot from Ukrainian sources and other sources is that one of the reasons for the Ukrainian kind of setback and collapse has been that U.S. intelligence sharing stopped, and this way the Russians and North Korean soldiers could move up to Ukrainian positions unidentified. I think that is most likely not as impactful as other factors. So right now, you see Russian forces have even pushed a little part into Ukraine, into the Sudzha Oblast. This has been going on for quite a while. There's been Russian assaults towards this road in particular, and this attempt on getting some Ukrainian territory and foothold in Ukrainian territory has been mainly for operational reasons for the Russians to get better fire control over the main road going in and out of Kursk from the Ukrainian territory. And I'll try and go back to 1st of January, because we could have gone all the way back to August, of course, and talked about the whole operation, but I don't have enough information for that, and right now, and also it would need significant preparation to do that. But 1st of January, Ukraine more or less held a stable position, but one of the things that has been happening since the end of the year to 2024 has been that the Russians have steadily been advancing down this axis east of Sudzha, so from Koronevo towards the main road going in and out of Sudzha. And as we can see, if we go through the dates, the Russian advances towards Smolensk Lochnia was more or less kept at the Ukrainians managed to defend that pretty well for a very long time. Southwest of that, we see that they advanced towards the main road going in and out of Socha, and eventually captured very important positions that gave the Russians an ability to interrupt Ukrainian logistics. So when they captured Sverdlikovo, that was very much a turn of luck for Ukrainians, because it gave the Russians very short approach towards the highway. And you can see it's less than 10 kilometers. And as people who have observed FPV drone usage over the last 2 years, 10 kilometers is well in range for FPV drones. And one of the things that we have observed in the basement, and Andrew Perpetua has observed over the last few weeks, is that the Russians have changed their FPV drone tactic quite substantially. And the fact that they have had now this very important position in Sverdlikovo gave them a very big advantage when it comes to the range. Because one of the things that they've been doing is that they've been flying in FPV drones next to the roads and just landing them, waiting for passing vehicles before they attack. So basically setting up FPV drone ambushes. This is not something the Russians invented. Ukraine has been doing this for a long time. And it just shows that the Russians have been pretty good at copying Ukraine and actually putting the Ukrainian tactics into well use. And it's been really, really problematic for Ukraine. And in my opinion, from the information that I have both observing from afar and also by some conversations I've had with Ukrainian soldiers, the main problem for Ukraine inside the Kursk salient that they held up until just 10 days ago wasn't intelligence sharing. It wasn't necessarily that there were very large waves of North Koreans. That has been always a factor for the last few months. It has been the logistics routes that they've basically not been able to drive safely at all in and out of Socha for the last few weeks. This capture of Sverdlikovo has definitely been very impactful. And we don't really know how far they advanced towards the road. They may have been even closer during the last few days. There's also been reports that because of this road not working properly, people have been actually walking in and out of Socha all the way back into Ukrainian territory, walking 20 kilometers. And that is way too much if you want to carry any meaningful supplies. So this has really been a horrible situation for the Ukrainian forces inside Kursk. And my assumption is really that logistics has been the problem for Ukraine. And that's the main reason for what happened this week, or the past week, and why the Ukrainian forces basically had to retreat. They were forced to retreat. It wasn't necessarily a very well-planned retreat, even though there's been some reports that Ukraine was prepared to retreat. I think this came, unfortunately, a little bit too early for them to have been preparing it as it should have. A tactical retreat from a salient this large would have taken at least a week or maybe even more. And that's it. I also have just to show the impact of the drone war against the logistics routes. You can see that it's just an absolute enormous amount of drones that have been hitting the roads. It's just been really, really hard for Ukraine to operate in and out of Kursk. So if anyone has any comments or questions, I'll try to answer them.
I would just emphasize that, to your point, this is happening because Ukraine has been under tremendous pressure here for some time. And I've seen a lot of people pushing these strange conspiracy theories that there's been some sort of secret deal cut and the United States forced Ukraine to Kursk. And there's obviously no evidence of this. It's really just the conditions, the tactical and operational situation in Kursk that has forced Ukraine to withdraw. They weren't told to do so. And I would say that this outcome, I think, was more or less inevitable once Ukraine's attack into Kursk, which is a long time ago now, that it was always going to be very hard for them to hold on to this long term after they themselves couldn't progress any further. And certainly after the interdiction of their logistics reached that tipping point where they had dozens of vehicles destroyed on the main supply route there, then it was really just a ticking clock as to how many more days or weeks they would be able to maintain their foothold here. It just to emphasize for our audience, continue to be very, very skeptical about people making very extreme claims about why this has happened, whether there was some deal forced on Ukraine or, the intelligence sharing or pause in security assistance. None of that. There's no evidence that any of that was particularly relevant here. All the Ukrainians themselves who've been fighting in Kursk, who have spoken about this, have made that point that, yeah, we were just in bad shape here already. The loss of some intelligence really had no impact on the outcome here in Kursk.
Yeah, it doesn't really add up with the operational picture. I mean, sure, certain geospatial intelligence capabilities will prepare you a little bit better sometimes against large assaults, but the assaults have been nonstop really for months and months. The problem isn't about losing satellite imagery. Most of the surveillance and intelligence gathering in this area has been happening by Ukraine by flying either small quadcopters to control smaller areas or larger surveillance drones. That's how they spot infantry. That's how they spot mechanized units. So it's just a spin that someone had to do at this moment, and it's rather unfortunate because you can blame whoever you want, but the outcome is what it is. And I think that Ukraine has achieved a lot of things with this operation. Unfortunately, the end hasn't been very positive, in my opinion. It's been quite disastrous for Ukraine because they lost equipment and probably lost a lot of people as well in the process of pulling out. But the real blow for them towards the end was the loss of the logistics. That if you don't have drivable roads in and out of Surjan, there's a lot of reports that the main roads in and out has been completely under Russian fire control for several weeks. Then there's just a question of time before the operation had to end. And it seems like it ended a little bit more abruptly than the Ukrainians anticipated, and that unfortunately only Ukraine can answer for what actually happened in the end of that operation. So why the Russians should stop at Kursk? I assume that's is kind of framed towards if they will continue to advance into Ukrainian territory. Well, hopefully the Ukrainian border is a lot better defended than the positions they had inside Kursk were. As you can see on the map, the Russian advances has been really just in this area along the highway, and I'm assuming that that's been quite costly for them. This is not just we're going to enter Ukraine here kind of thing. It's been a part of a very long, large operation by the Russians towards the road. It hasn't been towards just crossing the border in itself. So that's been costly for them for sure. I don't assume they will attack over the border anytime soon. Ukraine has a lot of forces along the border, and there's a lot better defenses there. So I don't think they are gonna do that right now. They've also expended enormous amount of material and personnel to reclaim what they've reclaimed in Kursk, and continuing that operation, I don't think the Russians are interested in that right now. When the withdrawing started, from my point of view, it started probably this weekend. We don't really have any proof that it started any time before, but that's really, really hard to know. Something that Ukraine probably has tried to keep under operational security quite tight. I'm sure that they've prepared a pullout to a certain degree, but the first time I heard that the road was inoperable, it was at least 3 weeks ago. So I don't know how much they could actually pull out. And another question, yeah, as I commented, the defensive positions that Ukraine has along the border are significantly better prepared than what they actually did in Kursk.
Well, thanks for the update on that, Erlend. I know there's a lot of stuff flying around about that right now, and it's a really dense situation in terms of what's going on there. So thanks for explaining. Yeah, if you have any questions in chat about it, go ahead. Go say something.
Yeah, I just want to add that a lot of what happened there is probably going to be conflicting reports, because you're going to get reports from single individuals rather than a unified report from the Ukrainian military. Maybe at some point in history we'll get an accurate report of what happened in the Kursk operation, but I have absolutely no hope that we're going to know anything in detail that can be verified for a very long time.
Yeah, I don't
So
know,
just be skeptical. Like, just be skeptic towards any kind of information that seems to be very, very significant. I think there's been a lot of speculation, as Colby mentioned, that it's this kind of groundbreaking thing for the Russians, that the intelligence was cut off or something like that. It just doesn't add up.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be a lot of like new information or direct sources for a while, but I don't know, maybe in a while we can look at the whole thing in context, because I think it would take some time to really like put all together, like from the beginning to the end of it, the whole operation. Like we can kind of look in context about like what happened, what was accomplished, because I think it's still kind of a majorly open question that we discuss a lot and a lot of people discuss a lot. Like, was this worth it to do for Ukraine, right? Or would it have been better for them to like defend or whatever? But I think we're probably not to the point where we can assess that right now. Maybe not even a month from now, but I don't know. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I just want to say that I think around September or in the end of August, we had a live where we talked about the progress that Ukraine had. And I remember I was discussing with Geek, 122, and some other people that Ukraine really needed to capture Koronevo. And I think when they didn't do that, as Colby mentioned, that was probably one of their operational goals. They would have either needed to create massive defensive lines behind their own positions, and because they were threatening Koronevo. But at some point after the attempted offensive towards Glushkovo, to cut off the forces and then probably rout whoever was in Koronevo and capture it. When that failed, I think the only way that Ukraine could have kept on to this large chunk that they had at the end of August would have been to do what the Russians are doing, just dig trenches all around, all the way around the salient and mine everything. But the Ukrainians doesn't have the resources to do that at the level as to the same level as the Russians do. There's been some effort to put some of these anti-tank ditches and minefields and these pyramids in certain areas, but it doesn't seem like it has been effective, probably because the defenses have either not been defended properly, or it wasn't, the minefields probably weren't wide enough, and the anti-tank ditches weren't actually completed, etc. So at some point, in my opinion, this winter, Ukraine would have probably benefited from retreating from Kursk earlier. But then there's political, strategic thinking that is very hard for us to comment on as well.
Yeah, look, people are still arguing about battles, operations, campaigns from the Second World War and whether leaders and generals made the correct decisions. So I don't think that we're going to have any level of certainty about whether the Kursk operation was a good or bad idea for quite a long time. I know within Tochnyi, there's a lot of opinions on both sides of that question. So I don't think that anybody's going to be able to really be able to say with any confidence that they have the correct answer to that question. Because again, 80 years later, we're still arguing about this for battles in the Second World War, and we have a hell of a lot more information about all of those than we do about this operation. So it's just one of those things where there's good arguments being made on both sides, but I think that the humble answer to that question is it's not really something that can be definitively known.
Yep, I agree, and I think that we can comment on the facts that we see, and the reports that we see are concise with with facts that we can verify. And then there's going to be a lot of arguing back and forth for months now, probably, within Ukraine and also in the pro-Ukrainian community. So, there's probably still a lot of interesting open source work that can be done to assess the situation and the whole operation. But to judge decision making from afar is, I think, it's going to be very hard because we just don't have all the facts, and there's going to be conflicting information.
Well, thanks, Erlend and Colby. I think that was a good Kursk update. Hopefully, you got some good information there. And you guys have any questions in the future about it, let us know in the comments or in chat.
Well, I have a question for Colby. What's up with the GLSDB, and why is it suddenly coming back to Ukraine?
Sure. So ground launched small diameter bomb was first provided to Ukraine like 10 months ago or so. Not long after it arrived, it was found that it was not performing as expected, as desired in combat conditions, and there were a number of different issues with it. One of it being vulnerability to Russian electronic warfare, but there were a lot of other hardware difficulties aside from that were impacting its performance. And there were some particular factors that were impacting small diameter bomb in this ground launch configuration that the typical air launched small diameter bomb did not suffer from. So even though it's the exact same system, the way that it's being employed, being dropped from the aircraft versus launched from the ground, that impacted the its electronic warfare vulnerability. They had to basically withdraw those and send it back to Boeing and Saab, and they've been working on fixing all these different problems. And now Reuters has reported that they have resolved these problems, or so they believe, and they're going to be resuming shipments of GLSDB back to Ukraine, and hopefully it'll be working better now that they've spent 10 months working on all these different problems. So hopefully sometime soonish we'll get some evidence of it being used, and hopefully it's effective now and isn't suffering to the same degree from Russian GPS interference, and all the other hardware issues have been fixed.
I too have a question for Colby. Colby, have you published any articles lately?
I don't think not in the past week. Nothing on Ukraine, at least. I have one in the works for Insider, and there will be there's always lots of stuff in the pipeline. But there's one on Ukraine in the works for Insider. I don't know when that will be ready and published. But that's definitely coming soon. TM.
Well, stay tuned to the Insider for that. Erlend, do we have any stuff on the website that was published that we want to let people know about?
I don't think since last time. My article got published in a Norwegian paper. I'm happy about that, but no other. So the article I published like 3 weeks ago, a month ago, was translated to Norwegian and published. So that's good. And we got a little reference to Tochnyi. So
we're big in Norway, huh?
I need to look at the stats.
One thing I'm always flattered, like we have had, some guests on here that are pretty high profile, and like to a man or to a woman or whatever you say it now, they always say like I've heard of you. Like no one's ever been like I've never heard of you guys. So we seem to be doing all right in terms of getting our name out.
And I hope even more in the future, but it's a lot of work. The research is probably what people notice, and mostly, and hope that we can spread it even more around. Daniela has been really punching out articles, and
yeah, it's true. We have a lot of people who work really hard at Tochnyi who are just kind of quietly researching very important technical topics that have a bearing on what's going on. And we really appreciate everyone spreading the word about Tochnyi and supporting the work of all of our diligent researchers. Colby, there's a question about GLSDB. Does it have its own launcher, or is it launched by something else?
It does have a proprietary launcher.
So he actually asks if, or they ask if it can be launched by HIMARS. Is that possible?
There's no indication that that integration work has been done. So there's a proprietary launcher from Boeing and Saab for it.
And then there's a question also about European states have any plans for their own HIMARS. Well, there are at least a couple of plans and projects in development. It's not a HIMARS, but it's it's a precision long-range artillery, rocket artillery. Isn't it called a Europulse or something, Colby?
It depends on how you want to define the word there. So Europulse, I mean, Pulse is an Israeli system. It's just an Israeli system that countries in Europe want to either buy, or maybe some of them are interested in producing it locally, but it's an Israeli system. So XPAL, a Rheinmetall subsidiary in Spain, has a deal to produce the various munitions suite that Pulse uses, and some others are talking about producing those launchers in Europe. But that's just, it's licensing an existing system from Elbit, which is an Israeli company. So I know obviously the French are talking about perhaps developing something from scratch as a replacement for their current M270s, or their variant of the M270, which is the American tracked MLRS system. But this is still fairly theoretical as far as I understand it. I don't know that a contract's even been awarded to begin development work on that. Perhaps it has. I haven't noticed that. But in any case, I mean, they're talking about this being like a decade-long project, basically, to do that development. It's just to procure a very, very small number of launchers. So that's not really even worth any consideration. It's not a serious program. So other countries will have to make a decision about what they want to do, whether they want to try and do that same thing and develop something locally, or they want to just buy existing systems, or they want to try and license produce existing systems. Obviously, the Poles are doing some local assembly of both HIMARS and the Korean system. So different countries will have to make their decision about what they want to do. But as it stands, there's no quote unquote entirely European system that's not somebody else's system.
Also, there's a question if there's any news about the Swedish AWACS or similar platform, or the use of Combat Boat 90. About the CB90s, I can say that they are in Ukraine. Several have been delivered. Their operations are more or less 100% obscured from public. So I assume they are using them. I've heard reports that they've been successfully, or I think Ukraine published that they've successfully integrated air defense missiles on them, and also had success with that. But I don't really know anything more about that. About the Swedish AWACS, I'm not sure. Well, they are going to Ukraine at some point. I'm not sure when, but I think it is this year. So,
like Sweden giving Ukraine AWACS?
Yeah, they're giving them two mini AWACS planes. Yeah,
nice. Those are like radar plane people. Yeah. All right. Well, do we have any other questions or any other stuff we want to address, Erlend, before we wrap up?
There's a question. There's a question about if we covered the funding cuts of the Yale team that was tracking not only Ukrainian children that were abducted, but also other war crimes committed by Russia. I know that some people in our team are trying to inquire more information about it. So maybe we will see some reports about that next week.
Yeah, I was trying to track the USAID cuts. Of course, also like Radio Liberty, Voice of America was also cut this week. So could have some Ukraine specific implications we should probably look into. But anyway, yeah. Any other stuff before we close out?
Not for me, unless GAU or you have anything more. I think that's it.
No, not from my side.
All right, I guess we'll wrap up here then. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in this week. Of course, as I said before, please do like and subscribe to Tochnyi. We really appreciate it. We broadcast every Sunday at 2100 Kyiv, but sometimes we have other stuff. So if you subscribe, then you'll know when we have other things going on. You hit that little bell and all that. And then also, of course, check out our website, Tochnyi.info. We have a lot of great research there. Check out our Twitter and our BlueSky. That's the social media we're active on. But if you could mention us on other social media we're not so active on, we always appreciate that. We'll do our best to bring you guys more up-to-date information about what's going on in Ukraine and keep it accurate. And we'll cover the Russian invasion. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see everybody next week. Slava Ukraini.
Slava.
On behalf of the brave.